For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:06 on CJAD 800. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Mike Newton, who's in for Josh tonight. Mike, welcome back.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Good to be back.
It's our annual chat because Josh is off to Hong Kong soon.
It is. So it's once a year I get to try and replace the big booming voice of Mr. Radio. So I will do my best to try and keep our listeners entertained.
Excellent. And this evening our profile is Michael Seligman of Utex. We'll have Michael on in just a few minutes because usually at the start of the show we talk about some entrepreneurial news. But off the top, we wanted to devote a bit of time to talk about leadership, Mike. And maybe I'll just give the floor to you because you have a bit of an interesting initiative when it comes to leadership here in Montreal, cooking, and I'm pretty interested to hear more about it.
Definitely. I'll save that for about a minute or two from now. I'm just going to go into kind of some of the impetus that brought around the whole objective. I think one of the things we see, and we have seen generationally, is the loss of leaders within our city for various reasons along the way. And I'm not going to get into a political debate on air, but there's no doubt we have lost some future leaders. I think part of the goal is to try and create an environment that is really fostering the leadership mentality. There's no doubt that people will argue that leaders are born and not made. I happen to subscribe to that theory. I think you'll notice those people that have been successful leaders have found their ways as coach of their hockey teams, or captains of their hockey teams or their soccer teams. There's always been a certain amount. So I think that, unfortunately, I think a lot of times, and our guest, Michael and I had this conversation earlier, that I think we find ourselves not sitting in a corporate environment that really fosters leadership. So in many cases, I think the role has to be on those business leaders within our community to step up to the mic, I guess, excuse the pun, in order to bring around leadership discussion. So one of the things we've taken an opportunity to work with is Mr. Anthony Calvillo, who we all know as probably the greatest quarterback in Montreal Alouettes history. Well, I say that because somewhere along the way, I'm sure there's a couple of old timers that I don't want them calling in on air for that. So, and Anthony and I have done a few initiatives together. We've worked on Cedars Can Support together. He did a presentation for us on our international group about 2 months ago, and we've kind of struck off this whole need for leadership within the community. So Anthony and I have put together presentations, leadership presentations or seminars or symposiums or whatever you'd like to call it, with the goal at the end of the day to try and raise awareness for leadership, as well as trying to help foster and create an ongoing environment that brings to, whether it's existing senior leaders to recognize that they need to be addressing leadership issues with the young people that need to hone skills, or whether it's the young people themselves that want the support and want the idea. So we're starting very shortly. As a matter of fact, we're putting all the pieces together. And over the next few months, before Mr. Calvillo decides to jump back onto the field with some coaching initiatives, to try and do something a little different, I guess, within the Montreal marketplace. So if anybody does have any interest or there's anything, please feel free. You can email me at mnewton, MNEWTON, at flmontreal.com, and I can give you the layout of the program and what we're looking and trying to accomplish.
Excellent. I'm very excited to hear more about this as it develops. And the thing about Anthony Calvillo that's so great, I mean, he's not just a quarterback, right? Because he's been involved him and his wife have been involved in so many charity activities in the Montreal area over the years. And to me, he is a real example of proper leadership. Someone who is disciplined, polite, kind-hearted, but at the same time has that vision and that ability to execute.
Having spent time with him off the field, it amazes me that he was as strong as he was on the field, because he's a great gentleman. He's a great father. He's a great family man. And he really is an inspiration, off of the usual sports. Those of us that are sports junkies love to put our athletes in high esteem, and in many cases not warranted. Certainly what we see come out of the NFL and all the stuff like that. But certainly as far as Anthony's concerned, he's a mensch, a gentleman who, I consider to be lucky to shake hands with and spend some time with.
I want to share a story that I read about leadership today on Forbes.com, and this is kind of coming back to the theme, and it's really interesting. The headline is "Leadership Experts Worry About Process, Leaders Worry About Results." So isn't that an interesting sort of disconnect there? Because we all sort of want to know what's the magic secret to getting there, to being a good leader. But really, the process is what I guess the leaders are supposed to ask other people to do. Is leadership really providing the structure to have others carry out the process for you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of angles to it. One is that try and ask people to define the difference between management and administration, and in many cases they'll use the two terms interchangeably. And the reality is they're not anywhere close to being the same thing. Management is a big picture. It is empowering and about using other people in the grand scheme in order to accomplish a goal for the team, whereas administration really is process driven, as you mentioned from that Forbes article. So I think that's, it's a very very easy mistake to make. But there is no doubt that I think the leadership, those that have succeeded in leadership, have a few common traits. One of them is there's no way you can do this without passion, and our guest will talk about that a bit later. That was the thing that struck me the most, I think, about our initial conversation, was his passion associated with it. Execution. I think the administrators put the process in place, and the leaders end up making sure, as you said, the results and the execution gets done, and some mindfulness as well. I think you need to be able to see what's going on around you and tweak your environment based on the people you're talking to. Where sadly, procedure really has no face to it. Procedure is paper, and management really takes into account people.
Is leadership always democratic? Because there's one line in the Forbes article that I found was interesting, quoting a leadership guru saying, did the leader arrive at his or her decision through a process that was democratic and positive and transparent? Because if so, then the organization will thrive. But is that necessarily true? Do all leaders need to be democratic, or is leadership sometimes being autocratic?
Well, I think the definition by default, I don't believe you lead by committee, and I'm sure you can ask my partners and they'll tell you the same thing. I do believe that you need buy-in. I do believe that you need people to be contributing to the process and believe in what they're doing. But the reality is most people do want to be led. And there's going to require somebody to stand up and take the ball. I've joked for years that the easiest job is leader of the opposition, and the hardest job is being prime minister. Leader of the opposition, all I'm trying to do is poke holes, whereas the prime minister, I'm stuck with everything that's put out there. And I think that really falls to the same scenario from a leader perspective. I don't think you can have a true democratic process, because I think you get caught up in procedure, you get caught up in decision making, and you get caught up in buying for consensus. And as much as politically it's the right thing to do, practically speaking, I don't think, if you look at most of the most successful organizations, that everything has been run by committee.
One saying I want to throw by you, the key to success is delegation. What do you think?
Yeah, certainly part of it. Delegation, I think, is a harsh word. I think delegation sounds so negative, as opposed to me giving you something I don't want to do. Though I do define management by getting people to do things they didn't know they were doing without them actually knowing they're doing it. So, but I think the process is you do need to be able to empower those people below you, and that includes delegation, though I don't think the pure definition is delegation.
So what should Quebec be doing to foster a bit of a better climate for more young leaders?
Well, I think the key, obviously, is making sure that we keep our young potential leaders in this city around. I mean, there's no way that you can build a strong tax base and a future unless you have people that are willing to take the ball and run with it from a leadership perspective. So it's very, very, very frustrating to see future leaders leaving for what they perceived to be an injustice. Whether it is or it isn't is, perception is in the eyes of the beholder, right, at the end of the day. So we need, as business leaders, we need to be stepping up to the plate to try and find a way to keep these people here, and whether that's being involved in the schools, whether that's being involved in the universities, some kind of format of trying to push forward leadership and young growth is the only way a city is going to survive.
All right, coming up on today's Entrepreneur, Michael Seligman joins us, our profile of an entrepreneur, and he's with Utex. And Mike, do you want to give out your email address one more time? Because hopefully there'll be news about this leadership initiative with Anthony Calvillo soon, and hopefully you'll build that email list and get people informed about it.
You got it. mnewton, MNEWTON, at flmontreal.com. Thank you.
Excellent. So Michael is next.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
721 on CJAD, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and Fuller Landau's Mike Newton in for Josh Miller tonight. And let's introduce our guest this evening, Mike. He is another Mike, Michael Seligman of Utex. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, Dan. Nice to be here.
Welcome back to CJAD. And first, the easiest question of the evening will be, what does Utex do? Tell us about the warm and comfy things that you guys make.
Utex specializes in ladies and men's down coats. And we have a long-standing reputation for offering value to the consumer so that they're able to buy an affordable coat that will keep them warm, that will be light, so they can travel with it and protect them against our winters and wonderful weather systems.
So, excuse the pun, but let's get away from the warm and fuzzy conversation and go back to actually how this all started and how you got involved. Maybe give us a little bit of your history before your Utex history.
Okay, about 27 years ago, I accidentally got into this industry. A summer job turned into a full-time opportunity, and I was involved in textile importers and garment agencies, and over about the course of 22 years, I evolved in my career from different places in the industry, which led up to Utex 10 years ago, specializing in ladies' outerwear.
So the move from Utex, obviously, it for those of you that aren't aware, it had a previous life, if you will, and you were presented with an opportunity a few years ago. Maybe you can give our listeners an idea of how it came about and how long you had to think about the exercise.
Wow. Well, Utex, as some people know, was founded in 1943 and was in its 68th year 3 years ago. Doing men's and ladies' outerwear and men's suiting and sportswear, and I was managing the ladies' outerwear division. And I was called into my boss's office one morning, and I was told the sad news that the family was going to close down the business effective immediately in the middle of a season, or as the spring 12 season was about to begin in 2012. And I thought for a few seconds about trying to process this information and thinking about all the cargo that was leaving China or already arrived in Montreal, and all the suppliers that had fulfilled their orders and shipped to us, and all the customers that were expecting their merchandise to arrive and go on the retail floor throughout North America, and the work that we had already done on the next season, fall 2012. And I said, I'd really like to find a way of continuing this business. There's a business, and with your blessings, I would like to have an opportunity to keep it going if possible. So I basically just reacted on the spot, and those were the words that came out.
But you bit off more than just the Utex brand at that point.
We were dealing with all brands, all outerwear brands of the company at that moment in January of 2012, all the licensed brands, and whether it was men's or ladies, there was a continuity and a reputation that needed to be protected. And I thought about that immediate moment in the season, and I thought about the future and continuing going on with this business strictly in ladies' outerwear, but having the Utex name protected as it always was well respected for all of those 68 years, and it was very important to me to make the suppliers whole and deliver, the product that was promised to the retailers.
Michael Seligman of Utex, our profile this evening on Today's Entrepreneur. More after the break at 7:25.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:28 in studio with us, Michael Seligman of Utex, and pretty interesting story, Michael. You really decided to take over this business on the spot, which is so cool. When you were taking it back to that moment when you're in the room, your bosses announce that this company is going to be shut down, and you say, "No, wait, hang on a second. There's an opportunity here." Were you confident in that spontaneous decision the entire time, or did you second guess yourself later on?
I was confident because I had already been having discussions with a very close friend of mine who's an investment banker, and we had been working for about 24 months to look at investing in a company where he would provide the capital and I would provide the management and operations, and nothing ever came about until that time. And really knowing that I had that support gave me the confidence in the room with my boss that day. So.
And so, did you were looking for sort of any business to get involved in, and then did this come as a total shock to you, or did you suspect that maybe this would eventually be the one?
I never expected that Utex would close or change in any way, and I wanted to stay in my field where I had the most experience. But we were open-minded to looking at any kind of a business that I would do hand in hand with my so-called day job, and I was torn. One of the reasons I never made a move was because I didn't want to give up working at Utex.
More with Michael Seligman in a moment. We'll talk about the various brands that he manages and, of course, going from employee to employer. That's on the way on today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:36. Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Mike Newton, who's in for Josh Miller this week. And our guest this evening is Michael Seligman of Utex, and we were talking about Michael's story, which is kind of interesting, just spontaneous. The company was going to stop operations. He just jumped in there while he was being told of this by his bosses and said, "No, you know what? I'm going to take over."
I find it very interesting because obviously there's a lot more to that story that we don't have time to really get into everything. But I think the key aspect from the conversations I had earlier with Michael really revolved around this whole discussion of brand management. I think a lot of people do not recognize the amount of time and effort that goes into managing a brand. I think, Michael, maybe if you give us a little bit of insight into what you initially started with, what you pared it down to, and then how you've kind of grown it from there.
Yeah, sure. At the time, we were managing about 5 different ladies' outerwear brands, and those were all under licensing agreements. And basically, we would be responsible to go out and travel the world and bring back product and design and put a collection together, sell it to our retail-based customers in North America. And we were basically paying the royalty to these licensors. And when I had the opportunity to take that step forwards, I wanted to maintain the reputation of the corporation and deliver that whole season, and then move forwards with the house brand rather than which is Utex Ladies, rather than going after other licensing agreements. And I wanted to focus all of our energies in making Utex a household name again, where it was for many, many, many decades. And I think that we've achieved some of that, and we're on our way towards future growth and having that product known for its name.
I think obviously the fashion industry, you're only as good as your last season. You made a comment that when you had taken this over, you couldn't afford to not have the Utex name on the floor for the upcoming season. So I think you did just about anything and everything possible to make sure that you carried that line, even if you weren't maybe 100% prepared.
Definitely, you just can't lose real estate if you give up budget and dollars and rack space in a department store or boutique, and the consumer comes in and doesn't see you one season. They're going to choose something else and forget about you next season. You can't exit and re-enter that smoothly. It's very difficult to regain the consumer's trust. And we did have to get involved in delivering a lot of product that we knew we wouldn't have any future with, but again, doing it all to protect the reputation. And that was, as I mentioned, extremely important to us because it was all under the Utex Corporation umbrella.
You also made a move to go to one season instead of 2.
Right. We have what's called a spring-summer season and a fall-winter season. Utex has always been known for its vision and industry leadership in the down coat product, and that's really a fourth quarter cold weather seasonal type of a product compared to light rain jackets and trench coats and anoraks. which are very price sensitive and have a much shorter selling window of literally only a few weeks compared to several months. And it just wasn't profitable or worth the investment to continue making a whole collection, traveling the world. And, when you have a 90-10 volume split, 90% winter and 10% spring, we just wanted to focus our energies on our best season.
So needless to say, while I cussed and sweared my way through the streets of Montreal last week with all that snow, you were tap dancing at your office.
Absolutely.
Maybe give us a bit of an insight in terms of building a line. How far in advance? Obviously, if you're working on one season, you're working year-round on one season. What kind of time frame, what kind of travel, what kind of energy goes into building a line for one season?
A lot does. We start 12 months in advance, meaning just after Labor Day in September, we'll travel to Europe, meaning myself and a designer or merchandiser, and we'll shop at least 3 different cities. Could be a London, Munich, Paris. So you're flying overseas, arriving on a workday morning, ready to hit the stores as soon as they open after a night on the plane. And you spend probably a couple of days, sometimes only one day in a city, shopping the stores, looking for trends and analyzing fabrications, colors, silhouettes, furs, etc., and buying samples. And they're very expensive, and it takes a lot of bright decision making to make sure that once you're investing in these samples that you bring back the right ones. And once you've done Europe once or twice per season, because there are situations where we go back a second time, just to see how the market has evolved and updated itself about a month or 6 weeks later, we then put together sketches and do our product development and merchandise, taking the styles from the European retail stores into what we would present as a Utex ladies collection, meaning we do get inspired from some of this product, but we also do have our runners and bestsellers that we translate the European fashion into. And from there, we go to China to make the samples, and that requires a lot of technical expertise, and coming back ultimately to the showroom and presenting these finished samples with our labels and branded logos and hang tags on them, in front of a retail buyer. And basically that's called a preview, and we get their first reactions on it, and then have to go back and do it again a few weeks later, just to allow them the opportunity to shop the market and come to the decisions that they need to make as buyers.
So that's the sourcing of the product. That's getting the product here. Now you got to sell it. Next week, I understand you're off to New York for Market Week.
Right. There's a big winter market week next week, and I'll be down there for 3 days seeing customers in our New York showroom. And it's very exciting to have them come from all over the U.S., and New York's the big meeting spot for doing that. And we'll ship all of our samples down to our showroom, and we'll do the same thing down there as what we do up here, and meet all of our American retailers and some European who fly in for the week.
Are you still doing trade shows? Are you still doing the Magic Show in Vegas? Are you still doing a lot of these? I understand a lot of people are cutting them out. Very costly. Nobody's writing at these shows, and it's more about a network and a social event.
It is. I find it very important to go, especially to the February Magic, because that's the fall-winter show, and we do have the opportunity to see our retail buyers and their bosses. A lot of the VPs and general merchandise managers will be walking the show, and of course having appointments at certain booths to see some of their vendors. But just by being there and having the exposure to those buyers and the whole industry who's really out there to show what they've got for the upcoming season is very important. And you have to be in the know. You have to be at a bunch of these events to know what's going on and see what your buyers are seeing, and let them know and let them see you there.
But you're not setting up booths.
No, we don't take a booth of our own or display or present at these types of trade shows. No.
And in terms of marketing, how much energy do you put in these trade shows versus perhaps other forms of marketing? Can you describe what your mix is like?
Marketing really is basically phone calls and emails and networking and seeing people, and if people are available to have a coffee or a dinner, and just really catching up with them and letting them know that you're on the pulse of the business, that you're on trend, that you're off to Europe, you're off to China, that you're bouncing around from showroom to showroom, and that you're important, that you're on top of what you do in the market. And that's really the best kind of marketing. It's not about putting up billboards or television commercials. It's about being in touch with the people that you do business with, and being on top of your game.
Michael Seligman from Utex, our guest this evening on Today's Entrepreneur. And Michael, after the break, we'll bring in Ernie Furt to the conversation, and Ernie will help us out with some year-end tax planning, so that should be pretty helpful. And Ernie's on the way, but first, 7:45.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:50. Welcome back to Today's Entrepreneur. Inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and Fuller Landau's Mike Newton in for Josh Miller tonight. We have Michael Seligman in studio, our profile for this evening of Utex, and we'll also bring in Ernie Furt, tax partner at Fuller Landau. Welcome back, Ernie.
Thank you.
Now, I feel like I just finished filing my taxes, but I guess it's time to start planning the year end. So for both personal and for corporate, if this happens to be your year end, perhaps we should start with the individuals, because we should start putting it in the back of our head. Perhaps December's coming along, and
December's coming along. There's a lot of people who haven't done certain things. They haven't gone to visit their dentist. They haven't gone to visit their eye doctor, and these are medical expenses that could be claimed on their tax return. So if you need to make these appointments, do so before everybody goes on vacation in the month of December. Also, you can make your donations. If you recall, back in August, everybody was doing the Ice Bucket Challenge for ALS. Mm-hmm. Did everybody make those donations? I hope so. And if you made donation commitments, pay them. So you get your donations, and you get your donation credits when it comes tax time. Another easy way of doing those donation pledges are you can donate your securities that have appreciated in value, and you can get rid of that capital gain by doing so. These are some of the small things that you can do. So certain things, if you need money and you have some funds in an RRSP or in a TFSA, and you really need to take that money out, maybe you should pull it out of the TFSA. And if you're going to pull it out in December, not in January, because you'll get refreshed TFSA room in January. The RSP will be taxable to you, so it's not a good idea to do that. You want to do RESP contributions for your kids. You could also be nearing the age of 71. If you're turning 71 this year, you must remove your RRSP by the end of December. So there's certain planning maneuvers that you could do in that regard. Also, if you had a lot of capital gains during the year, both for individuals and corporations, you can consider selling some of your losers to mitigate the tax bite on those capital gains.
And shall we move over to corporations?
Well, corporations, there's certain things that you can do, which is you can purchase certain assets before year end in order to benefit from the depreciation. We're also coming around to the holiday season, so corporations think of how can I give my employees Christmas gifts or holiday gifts without really causing them any tax. So you can give them stuff. You can go out, you can buy them a stereo system, and you could buy them all kinds of stuff. And as long as it's under $500, it's not going to be taxable to the employee, but it'll be deductible to you. But don't be lazy in that regard. You can't go and say, well, here's the cash equivalent to that, or here's a gift card. Gift cards work well for Quebec purposes, but they don't work for federal purposes. So go out and actually purchase the stuff, and you'll be okay in that regard. Make sure you made all your installments on the corporate side. Pay everything down. Take a look at your investment renewal options, just to accelerate or decelerate certain payments that you want to do. There are certain assets that you buy for a corporation that will give you a Quebec tax credit. Look at buying those assets. Mm-hmm. These are some basic techniques. Also, be organized. I noticed over the past couple of years in terms of donation receipts, I receive a lot of donation receipts by email. Question is, how many people have a little file in their computer called donations? Oh, we have two hands up in the studio.
Not three, unfortunately.
Not three. Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I heard that once before. So you basically take that little file, you create your file, and put in all those donation receipts in there. So when it comes to tax time, you have a record of that. This is essential. Record keeping is important because you've incurred the expenses. So at the end of the year, you want to make sure you aggregate them and give them over to your accountant so they can prepare your tax return in the best way possible.
As Josh knows, my year end is just scrambling a bunch of receipts and invoices together and handing them over to my accountant. But I'm improving.
As long as you have a box.
There's definitely a box. Yes.
Okay, as long
Or
as there's
big
a
envelope.
box or some folder that has a, eventually it will get you an alphabetic folder. You can do that. So step by step, Dan.
Now, were there any considerations, by the way? I remember you saying this last year when it comes to office Christmas parties.
Oh, well, office Christmas parties, generally speaking, they haven't changed this rule for eons. You can incur an office Christmas party. You can incur up to $100 a head to have an office Christmas party without incurring any taxable benefits for the employee. Anything over $100 a head gives you that little portion of a taxable benefit. And for GST purposes and QST purposes for the employers, they can claim 100% of the GST and QST paid on that Christmas party as opposed to a 50%er because everybody in the organization is invited.
All right, thanks, Ernie. Michael Seligman has his one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur. That's next.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
And remaining time, Ernie Furt is here, tax partner at Fuller Landau. Don't forget your year ends, everyone, and your Christmas bonuses and your party situations. $100 max?
$100.
Yeah, before they start getting at you. Okay, perfect. And Michael Seligman from Utex, our profile this evening on today's entrepreneur. Mike Newton in for Josh Miller. So a very interesting story, especially how Michael came to sort of come into this business as an owner. It's a bit of a different scenario.
It is. It's nice to see what was probably going to be another sad Montreal
Schmutta business.
Schmutta business.
Yeah.
I was trying to find the right word there. Sorry. Story. It's turned it into something very positive. Michael walked into my office before, and you can see right away from his enthusiasm and his passion and what he's doing that he really enjoys what he's doing. And a couple of good things. You're moving into the U.S. More and more. I think you're looking at a nice big increase there. And I think the most important thing right now is you're going to see a kids line coming forward in 2015. So
we're looking forward to that.
On that note, what's the one piece of advice you'd give?
It's very simple. Just be ready and willing to do absolutely anything that's required to make anything happen.
All right. Short and sweet. We like it. Thanks very much, Michael. Michael
you,
Seligman of Utex. And best of luck. Thanks for dropping by tonight on today's Entrepreneur.